The rain came down in heavy sheets that night, hammering the empty streets and rattling against the windows of a quiet town. Most people rushed for cover, but at the far end of an old park stood a forgotten gazebo. And inside it was a girl no one could ignore. She sat before a weathered piano, her clothes soaked, her hair clinging to her face. And yet her hands moved with a kind of desperate grace. Each note cut through the storm like a cry for help, fragile and haunting. Her eyes were swollen from tears, but she never stopped playing. It wasn't just music, it was a story of heartbreak, of being unseen, of trying to hold on when everything else was slipping away. Passers-by stopped briefly, curious, but most moved on. To them, she was just another girl chasing a dream that didn't matter. But to the few who listened closely, there was something unforgettable in the sound she created, a naking beauty that demanded to be felt. The piano keys, chipped and nearly broken, seemed to come alive under her trembling fingers. And in that storm, she wasn't just a girl. She was a voice the world had overlooked for far too long. What she didn't know was that someone else was watching, someone whose life was built in boardrooms, skyscrapers, and fortunes most people could never imagine. A billionaire who had everything money could buy, yet carried an emptiness he could never explain. He wasn't supposed to be there that night, not in that park, not in that storm. But fate has a way of pulling two worlds together when the time is right, and as the thunder rolled and the last note lingered in the rain-soaked air, his decision was already made. He would step forward. He would change the course of her life forever. But the question remained, was she ready to let him? Or would the storm inside her drown out the chance she never saw coming? The girl's name was Emily, though few people knew it. She had grown up in a small town where dreams rarely left the ground, and where music was often seen as nothing more than a hobby. Yet for Emily, the piano was her lifeline. Every melody carried pieces of her story, the loss of her parents, the struggles of working odd jobs, and the loneliness that came with being misunderstood. The storm didn't scare her. What frightened her more was the silence of giving up, the idea of never being heard. So she played, no matter how cold, no matter how harsh the night became. From the shadows, the billionaire watched. His name was Daniel Hayes, a man known in the world of finance, deals, and headlines. To strangers, he was untouchable, a symbol of power and wealth. But standing there, with rain dripping from his coat, he was simply a man staring at something he couldn't put into words. The sound of her piano reached him in a way business victories never had. It was raw, unpolished, and painfully real, something money could never create. Emily had no idea who lingered nearby, and even if she had, she wouldn't have cared. To her, billionaires belonged to another world entirely, a world where people like her didn't exist. But Daniel saw something different. He didn't just see a girl playing music in the storm. He saw resilience, a rare kind of courage that reminded him of the things he had lost chasing success. As the minutes stretched on, the rain grew heavier, and still Emily's fingers didn't stop. Each chord echoed with defiance, each note daring the world to listen. Daniel took a step closer, his heart racing with a decision he hadn't planned to make. The question was no longer if he would intervene, was how. And in that moment, the storm felt like only the beginning. Emily's world had never been kind. By day, she worked long hours in a small cafe at the edge of town, serving customers who barely noticed her. By night, when the streets grew quiet, she escaped to the old park, where the forgotten piano sat beneath the wooden beams of the gazebo. It was cracked and weather-worn, but to her, it was the only place where she could breathe. The stormy nights didn't matter. She had played through worse. What mattered was that the music gave her a way to speak when her voice felt too small for the world to hear. Daniel Hayes, standing under the dark canopy of trees, felt a strange pull he couldn't ignore. He wasn't the type to linger in the rain, nor was he someone who usually stopped for strangers. But there was something in Emily's music that unsettled him, something that reminded him of his own beginnings. Few knew that before the billion-dollar companies and luxury penthouses, Daniel had been the son of a struggling single mother, a boy who had dreamed of building a better life. He had buried those memories under years of ambition, but now, with every note Emily played, they rose to the surface like ghosts. The town had overlooked Emily, treating her as if her talent was a childish distraction. She had auditioned for small events only to be dismissed. Yet, the fire in her heart hadn't gone out. That night in the storm, her music carried not only sorrow, but defiance or refusal to let life silence her. Daniel recognized that spirit because he had lived it once. As lightning cut across the sky, he knew he couldn't simply walk away. But stepping into her world meant more than offering help, meant confronting parts of himself he had long tried to forget. And that made his next move even more uncertain. The storm only grew wilder, wind whipping through the trees as if the night itself wanted to silence her. Emily's fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from exhaustion. She had been playing for hours, pouring every piece of herself into the broken keys. Her music was desperate, almost pleading, as though each note carried a question no one had ever answered. Does anyone hear me? Does anyone care? Daniel stood frozen just a few feet away now, his shoes sinking into the muddy ground. Every instinct told him to step forward, to end this moment of suffering, yet something held him back. He could see her vulnerability, the way her shoulders shook with both strength and pain, and he knew this wasn't just a performance, it was survival. If he interrupted too soon, he feared he might break the very thing that made her music so powerful. A small crowd had gathered at the edge of the park, drawn in by the strange sight of a girl battling the storm with nothing but a piano. Some whispered, some scoffed, but no one moved closer. They were spectators, content to watch without understanding. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had lived his life among crowds like this, people who applauded success, but never saw the battles behind. Emily struck the keys harder now, her tears blending with the rain, her face fierce with determination. The old piano groaned beneath the force, its sound cracking but refusing to break. And in that chaos, Daniel felt his own heart race faster than it had in years. He had made decisions that shifted markets, signed deals that changed industries. But never had he faced a choice that felt this heavy. The storm roared, the crowd murmured, and Emily played as if the world itself was listening. Daniel took one step closer, the weight of his next move pressing down on him. Everything was building to this moment, her future, his past, and a decision that could shatter both. Just as Daniel stepped closer, ready to finally break the distance between them, a sudden crash split through the night. One of the gazebo's beams, weakened by years of neglect and the pounding storm, splintered and dropped to the ground with a deafening thud. The crowd gasped and pulled back, but Emily didn't stop. Her hands flew across the keys as if she hadn't even noticed, as if the collapsing structure was nothing compared to the storm she carried inside. The danger only seemed to fuel her fire, each chord striking louder, sharper, echoing into the night like a challenge. Daniel's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about music anymore. This was about survival. Yet even in the chaos, he realized Emily wasn't just refusing to give up. She was daring the world to take everything and still see her rise. And that terrified him more than the storm itself, because he recognized the same fire he once carried when he clawed his way out of obscurity. But then came the twist no one expected. From the back of the crowd, a man in a dark coat pushed forward, his voice cutting through the rain. "That's enough, Emily," he shouted, his tone carrying both anger and authority. Heads turned as whispers rippled through the onlookers. Emily froze for the first time that night, her hands hovering above the keys, her body stiff. The music stopped, leaving only the roar of thunder in its place. Daniel studied her face and saw it the fear. The history, the weight of someone she couldn't escape. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone tied to her past, someone who held power over her in ways Daniel didn't yet understand. The storm outside raged, but Daniel sensed the real storm was just beginning. And with that realization, he knew stepping forward would no longer just change her life. It might end up changing his as well. The crowd held its breath as the man in the dark coat moved closer, his presence cutting through the storm like a blade. Emily's hands dropped from the keys, her body tense as if every part of her wanted to shrink away. Daniel could see it. Now this wasn't just some stranger interrupting a performance. This was someone from her past, someone who carried the weight of her silence. Go home. Emily, the man demanded, his voice low but sharp. You don't belong here, parading yourself in front of strangers. His words dripped with control, the kind that had clearly been used against her for years. The crowd murmured, some uncomfortable, others too curious to look away. Emily's chest heaved, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the piano. For a moment, Daniel thought she might obey, retreating back into the shadows as she had countless times before. But then she lifted he.